What is a foodborne illness and what is a foodborne illness outbreak? What are TCS and ready-to-eat foods? What are the 5 risk factors of foodborne illnesses? Which populations have a higher risk for foodborne illness? How can you help to keep food safe in your operation? And what are the roles of government agencies in keeping food safe? So these are the main topics that we'll cover throughout the chapter. So foodborne illnesses, you have responsibilities for your operation, your staff, and your customers. So during this chapter, we'll go over some of those requirements just to keep your operation safe and make sure that you aren't posing a risk to others with unsafe temperatures, different pathogens, time of your food being out, things like that. So a foodborne illness is a disease transmitted to people by food. So it is considered officially an outbreak when 2 or more people have the same symptoms after eating the same food. An investigation is conducted by state and local regulatory authorities, and the outbreak is confirmed by laboratory analysis.
So it's considered with these 3 things here as an outbreak.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. And that's answering the question.
And that's answering the first question, the first main topic.
Right.
So some challenges operations face when it comes to food safety is time. So that's the pressure to work quickly. Language and culture. So your staff might speak a different language, so that makes it harder to communicate. So just breaking down those communication barriers. Literacy and education. So some staff might have different levels of education. So that includes the ServSafe training. Some people might not have that level of education. So you might need to take that extra step, teaching them safety when it comes to handling food. Pathogens, so that's illness causing microorganisms. So that might be viruses, bacteria, fungi, and that'll be covered in the next chapter. Unapproved suppliers. So that's food that is received from suppliers that are not practicing food safety, and that can cause a foodborne illness outbreak. High-risk customers. So the number of customers at high risk for getting a foodborne illness are increasing. So this includes a growing elderly population, those that are immunocompromised, so those with HIV. There are a few other groups, younger populations, and staff turnover. So training new staff compromises this because you are having to keep doing the food safety training. So the cost of foodborne illnesses to your business. So you might experience a loss of customers and sales, a loss of reputation, negative media exposure, lowered staff morale, lawsuits and legal fees, staff missing work, increased insurance premiums, and staff retraining. So those are all things we want to avoid by making sure that we're practicing, we're having safe practices when it comes to handling food. So the 3 ways foodborne illnesses can occur are by the 3 contaminants, which are biological, chemical, and physical. So biological would be pathogens. This is viruses, parasites, fungi, bacteria, and then some plants that carry poisons. Chemicals. So food service chemicals, if they're used incorrectly, so such as spraying chemicals too close to food, getting in the food, that can make someone sick. And then physical contaminants, so that'll be foreign objects such as metal shavings, staples, bandages, glass, dirt, bag ties, any paper or plastic that gets into the food, maybe a glove. And then there could be naturally occurring objects like fish bones in fish fillets. So that's another example. So the ways food can become unsafe, there are 5 very common ones. So this is purchasing food from an unsafe source. So it's better to purchase your products from a reputable seller.
Okay.
So failing to cook food correctly. So this can mean not cooking it at the right temperature. Um, so you always see those small like notifiers on a menu, like uncooked seafood or poultry or beef could cause an illness. So that
Right.
would cover that. Holding food at incorrect temperatures. So we want to make sure that when we do cook food, we don't leave it out at room temperature. If it's a hot item, it needs to be stored in a hot um, at a hot temperature. If it's a cold item, it needs to be stored correctly at a cooler temperature in the fridge. Using contaminated equipment. So that could mean cross contamination. So if you're, preparing poultry or fish or dairy, anything, you want to make sure you clean, rinse, and sanitize that surface before you use it on something else. And that will make sure that you don't have cross contamination in your products. And then practicing poor personal hygiene. So we want to make sure that we're always washing our hands, not touching our face, our hair, not using aprons in the restroom, things like that. And then to move forward, so practices related to foodborne illness. So time temperature abuse is a big one that goes back to creating foodborne illness. So time temperature abuse is when an item has stayed too long at temperatures that are good for the growth of pathogens. So if food isn't held or stored at the correct temperature, food isn't cooked or reheated enough to kill pathogens, and then if it is not cooled correctly. Cross contamination, like I just mentioned, is transferring pathogens from one source to another. So contaminated ingredients can be added to food that received no further cooking. Ready to eat food touches contaminated surfaces. So some foods are ready to eat, like uncooked fruits or vegetables. If you're not going to cook those items, then you need to make sure that they don't touch anything else because the pathogens won't be killed. Contaminated food touches or drips fluids onto cooked or ready to eat food, as shown in the photo to the left. So that looks like maybe beef blood touched lettuce. So the lettuce, it needs washed, but it doesn't need cooked at all. So it wouldn't be killing any of those pathogens. A food handler touches contaminated food and then touches ready to eat food, or contaminated wiping cloths touching food contact surfaces. Poor personal hygiene is another way. So failing to wash hands correctly after using the restroom, coughing or sneezing on food, touching or scratching wounds and then touching food, and then working while sick. We always want to make sure that no one's working while sick, and that's one of the most common ways that people pass pathogens into the food. And then poor cleaning and sanitizing. So equipment and utensils are not washed, rinse, and sanitized between uses. We want to make sure we're doing those 3 steps just to make sure that there are no pathogens at all on the equipment. Food contact surfaces are being wiped clean rather than being washed, rinsed, and sanitized. Wiping cloths are not stored in a sanitizer solution between uses. So wiping cloths should always be placed back in the sanitizing solution once done using. If not, the bacteria will grow on the cloth. And then sanitizing solutions are not the required levels to sanitize objects. So there is a certain level that the sanitizing solution should be in the water to where it will kill the bacteria. If it's not, it won't kill all the bacteria. And then you run a risk of contaminating other surfaces in your hands and things like that.
Now, yeah, okay. So they, I see that often too. The sanitizing solution, would that be bleach or is it a?
So there's a certain type of solution. I don't know the name of it, but it's a sanitizer. So you would wash when you're using it for like dishes and things, you wash the dish, you rinse it, and then you sanitize it. After
Oh,
you sanitize it, you don't need to rinse it off again.
okay, so I had the
So
sanitizing in the middle, then I had the rinse, but it's sanitizing last.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And don't know the solution myself, but I think I was thinking similar to bleach or Clorox, similar, but not.
It's some type of chemical. I'm sure it's not as strong, because once it dries, people are going to be putting food on that
Mm,
plate or handling food with those utensils. So I will have to look into what it's actually called, but I can definitely look into that and let you know.
okay. And then our knowledge. So we write an X on the 5 common causes of the foodborne illnesses. We write it
Yes,
to the,
yes. So we can just go through this really quickly. So we can just say which ones are um the causes of foodborne illnesses. So number one, purchasing food from an unsafe source. What do you think about that one?
yes.
Yes, that's correct.
You don't know, it has to be a safe source.
Right.
So we're gonna put an
Um,
X by the most common foodborne illnesses. So yes, purchasing food.
yes.
Okay, now
So
B.
number two is allowing pests to enter the operation.
Yes.
So that one's actually going to be no.
No,
So these are the most 5 common ones. That's not one of the most common when it comes to foodborne illness. So
okay.
we're going to skip over that one.
It's nasty, but it's not a
But
foodborne.
it's not that common. So we
Okay.
just, we want to be aware, but yeah.
Right.
So number three is failing to cook food correctly.
Yes, X.
Yes, that is correct. Number four is failing to rotate food during storage.
I don't know.
That one's no.
So we put an X or it's not a
No,
foodborne.
you don't mark that one.
Yeah, it just says rotate. Mhm.
So number five is using contaminated equipment.
Yes,
Yes, that one's correct. Number six, holding food at incorrect temperatures.
yes,
Yes. Number seven, practicing poor personal hygiene.
definitely yes.
Correct. And number eight, failing to store dry food correctly.
Not sure.
So that one would be no. Dry food doesn't really have a risk for pathogens because the pathogens are trying to feed off of something. So that's more so like meat and things like that.
Mhm.
So that would be no.
Okay,
Okay.
so the key was dry food and dry.
Dry food, right, right. So that's like your pantry items.
Mhm.
Um, there's not really, we want to make sure it's not wet, but other than that, it doesn't have to be stored at a certain temperature or anything like that.
Okay,
So the next section is food most likely to become unsafe. So TCS and ready to eat food are the two types of food that are most likely to become unsafe during the food. Sorry, I draw a blank. During the process of creating the food.
so
So
TCS means what? Time,
so
temperature?
TCS food is time and temperature control for safety. So there's two T's, but there's one in the acronym that stands
I
for two.
know, I was like, I
So
don't get.
time and temperature is the T, and control for safety.
Okay,
So on the next page, there's a full list of TCS foods. So these are the foods that are most likely to be to become unsafe.
pathogens.
So that would be milk and dairy products, shell eggs, meat. So that'd be beef, pork, and lamb, poultry, fish, shellfish and crustaceans, baked potatoes, heat treated plant foods such as cooked rice, beans, and vegetables, tofu or other soy protein, synthetic ingredients such as textured soy protein and meat alternatives, sprouts and sprout seeds, sliced melons, cut tomatoes, cut leafy greens, and untreated garlic and oil mixtures.
Hmm.
So ready to eat food also needs to be handled carefully. So ready to eat food is food that can be eaten without further preparation, washing, or cooking. So that includes cooked food, washed fruits and vegetables, and deli meat. So it'll also include bakery items like sugar, spices, and seasonings. So I know that's more so up your alley. So just making sure you stay, you know, consistent and aware of those items. So the populations that are most at high risk for foodborne illness, which was mentioned earlier, is the elderly population. Their immune systems are going to be weaker with age. Preschool age children, they haven't built up those strong immune systems yet, so they haven't been exposed to as many bacteria or pathogens for their immune system to get stronger. And then people with the compromised immune systems, like I mentioned earlier. So those with weakened immune systems or medical conditions. So those experiencing cancer or going through chemotherapy, those with HIV or AIDS, those that have gotten transplants or are preparing for a transplant. This could also include those with lupus or other diseases that compromise their immune system.
Mhm.
So for the next apply your knowledge section, we're going to go over this one. Write an X next to the food that needs time and temperature control to keep it safe. So number one, chopped lettuce.
Yes,
Correct. Number two is sliced watermelon.
yes,
Correct. Number three is dry rice.
no,
Correct. Number four is flour.
no.
Correct. Number five is cooked carrots.
I don't know, I say cook, but we need time, temperature, yes,
Yes, that's correct. And then number six is cheese.
yes.
Right. So the next apply your knowledge is who has a greater risk. Write an X next to each group that has a higher risk of getting a foodborne illness because of their immune system. So number one is school teachers.
No,
No. Number two is college students.
no,
Right. Number three is preschool students.
yes.
That's correct. Number four is healthcare providers.
I would say yes, but they're asking about foodborne, and so I'm gonna say no.
Correct. Transplant recipients.
Yes,
Yes. And nursing home residents.
yes.
Correct.
I almost want to say healthcare anyway, because they're in that sick
That's a
place.
tricky one since they're around so many different things.
Exactly.
But typically healthcare providers are, they do have stronger immune systems. They're working in hospitals, and
They should have all
their
those.
age is in between those,
Mhm.
obviously, of preschool students and the elderly. So they will typically have a normal, stronger immune system to fight against those pathogens.
Okay. And then,
So let's go to keeping food safe. So to keep your food safe, you want to just focus on these measures. Once again, purchasing from approved and reputable suppliers, controlling the time and temperature of the food, preventing cross-contamination, and practicing personal hygiene and cleaning and sanitizing.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's like they're gonna keep repeating that and that.
Yeah, hygiene is definitely important, especially when it comes to being over food that you're going to serve to other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's difficult, but
Even
just
provide.
trying, just at least being aware will help you in
Mhm.
your day-to-day operations within your food business.
Mhm. Okay, setting up your training and monitoring as
So
well.
we're going to move to training and monitoring. So this is just talking about making sure that your staff is trained to the same standard that you're trained to, and that you're able to monitor what your staff is doing in your business to make sure that they're staying up to the rules and guidelines, and making sure that all the practices within your business are safe when it comes to, the food, storing, cooking, prepping, cleaning, all those things. So we can skip over this one. So government agencies responsible for the prevention of foodborne illness. So we have the FDA, the USDA, the CDC, the PHS, and these all help with regulating food. And then they will also come into play when there's a foodborne illness outbreak and identifying where the food came from, what symptoms were had, and then what was the exact source of the illness. So we can go over this really quickly. So the FDA inspects all the food except for meat, poultry, and eggs, and regulates food transportation across state lines. So they issue a food code, which is a science-based code that provides recommendations for food safety regulations. And this was created for city, county, state, and tribal agencies. So it regulates food service for restaurants and retail food stores, vending operations, schools and daycare centers, and hospitals and nursing homes. So we do hear about the FDA a lot. The FDA regulates almost everything, Food and Drug Administration. So it's very important that, you do follow the food code, because that will probably help you have the safest practices for your business and your daily operations. And then some other agencies are the USDA, so the U.S. Department of Agriculture regulates and inspects meat, poultry, and eggs. And they also regulate food across the state boundaries. And then the CDC and PHS. So the CDC is Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And then the U.S. Public Health Service is the PHS. And then these are going to assist the FDA, USDA, and state and local health departments. So they're the ones that are going to conduct research into the foodborne illnesses when there's an outbreak. So if there's an outbreak, you want to let the PHS or the CDC know. And that's one of the steps in notifying people when it comes to people getting sick because of the food you prepared. And then we'll go over the steps for that and later on in the chapter. So the regulatory authorities are responsible for inspecting operations, enforcing regulations, investigating complaints and illnesses, issuing licenses and permits, approving construction, and reviewing and approving HACCP plans. So we're going to do the apply your knowledge.
HACCP plans, what's that stands for?
So that is actually not seeing hazard analysis and critical control points. So it's a preventative approach to food safety from biological, chemical, and physical hazards and production processes that can cause a finished product to be unsafe.
Okay. Hazardous. All right.
So it just is going to design processes to make sure that the food is at safe levels during production. Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to move to the apply your knowledge. So write the letter of the government agency in the space next to the action that the agency takes. Some letters may be used more than once. So this one's a little bit difficult because it does, some departments do the same things. So it seems like they're a little bit intertwined, but we can just go over this really quickly. So number one is write the codes that regulate food, regulate retail and food service operations. So this is going to be
C. No,
that's incorrect.
The code, they does the code. The FDA.
So that's going to be D, state and local health departments.
So they write the codes.
So states can write their own. They don't always have to follow the FDA.
So the FDA issues the code. On here it says, in addition,
the FDA issues a food code, but the states write the code for the local establishments.
All right.
Yeah, so that one's a little bit confusing.
I know that one.
Conducts research into the cause of foodborne illness outbreaks. So that one's going to be C, the CDC and PHS. Inspects meat, poultry, and eggs. Someone's going to be B, the USDA.
Yeah.
Writes the food code. That one's going to be the FDA. That's A. And then inspects retail and food service operations. That's going to be D, the state and local health departments.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to go over the chapter review case study. So it's going to ask us what the person did wrong in this situation and what they could have done in the situation instead of what they did wrong to make the situation right. So Lucas was not happy because he was working by himself. His coworker had called in sick and they were expecting their regular Wednesday night group of softball players. Lucas was not feeling too well himself. On top of this, the large group canceled at the last minute. Unfortunately, Lucas had already started cooking a dozen burgers on the grill. Lucas finished cooking the hamburger patties until they were done, and then he put them in a pan on the counter. Maybe someone would order a burger later, he thought. Because there were no customers yet, he made a quick run to the restroom. When he finished, he wiped his hands on his apron, combed his hair, and headed back to the kitchen. 20 minutes later, Lucas got his first customers of the evening. They were an elderly man and his 4-year-old granddaughter. Lucas was happy when they ordered a burger to share. Cook it medium, the man said. It looked like the pre-made burgers would stay on the counter for a while. Lucas went back to the kitchen and put a fresh patty on the grill. Then he wiped off the cutting board he had used earlier for prepping raw chicken. He sliced the tomatoes and onion. When the burger just passed medium rare, he plated it up. So in this situation, what did Lucas do wrong?
One, I see cutting board. First of all.
So that would be cross-contamination.
Yeah, he did that. He sliced he passed the medium rare, plated it. I don't know. He wiped his hands on his apron. I didn't like that. He combed his hair in the back of the kitchen. I think it was. He combed his hair and headed back to the kitchen. I didn't like that. He wiped his
hands. That would be personal hygiene.
Yeah. I think he cooked the burger too early. I'm not sure, but I think he did. He cooked it too early in anticipation of someone coming, but you can't do that because what if someone wouldn't have came? He didn't.
Right. So it wouldn't be wrong if he cooked the burger too early, but he left it out at an unregulated temperature. Right, at room temperature. So if he would have kept it in a hot storage space, then he could have cooked them earlier, but he didn't do that. So it made the food unsafe to eat.
Okay.
So the other things he did was came to work sick. He wore his apron in the restroom and he didn't wash his hands.
Okay, I see that. All right, I see he wasn't feeling well.
Right. So what Lucas could have done was he could have called in sick. He could have stored burgers in the correct temperature or thrown them out. Wash his hands after using the restroom and touching his hair. Removed his apron prior to using the restroom. And use a separate cutting board or wash, rinse, and sanitize the cutting board he used for the chicken to prevent cross-contamination.
Okay.
So what is a foodborne illness outbreak?
I think it's C, when 2 or more people report the same illness from eating at the same place.
Yes, that's correct. What is a ready-to-eat food?
A ready-to-eat food is uncooked rice, no, raw, no, sea salt or unwashed green beans. No, it's C.
It's C, sea salt.
Yeah, it is.
So that doesn't need any preparation.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so that's ready to eat. Why are preschool age children at higher risk for foodborne illnesses?
A, they have not built up their strong immune system.
Correct. What
And
is a TCS food?
I don't know, because I kind of forgot what TCS was. Time control, it was the two T's, I think.
Time and temperature control.
Okay.
Yes, that's going to be Sprouts. That was one of the items that was on the chart, was
Mm-hmm.
the Sprouts.
So it do need time, temperature. Okay, yeah, because bread don't. All right, I got it. And then the
The
five,
5 common risk factors that can lead to foodborne illnesses are failing to cook food adequately, holding food at incorrect temperatures, using contaminated equipment, practicing poor personal hygienes, and
I'm D.
correct, purchasing food from unsafe sources.
Mm-hmm.
So raw chicken breasts are left out at room temperature on a prep table. What is the risk that could cause a foodborne illness?
A, cross contamination.
So that one's going to be C just for that situation. It would be cross contamination if, say, it was on a cutting board and they moved it and they put tomatoes on there. But for this situation, it's going to be time temperature abuse because the chicken should be stored at a cool temperature, not at room temperature.
Raw chicken breasts were left out of the room temperature. Okay. What are the risks? Time, temperature, abuse. Okay, I see it. Thank
Okay, no problem. So what is TCS food?
you. It's D.
D, food requiring time and temperature control for safety. A food handler left a pan of roasted turkey breasts to cool at room temperature overnight. In addition to throwing away the turkey, what is an appropriate corrective action?
I don't know. I would guess D.
So that's correct. That one's going to be D, making sure the food handler understands safe cooling practices. So that can make sure that the food stays at a safe temperature and that you're not losing product.
Mm-hmm.
What is an important measure for preventing foodborne illness?
What is the important measure to prevent food? C.
Correct. Preventing cross-contamination. What is one possible function of a government agency that is responsible for food safety?
What is the possible function? Ensuring the products, monitoring the operations, and protecting. I'm not sure. Ensuring
This
the
one would be B. So A, ensuring a product's appeal, that would be more so marketing. Monitoring and operations revenue, that would go more with the finance side of the business, and then protecting a product's brand name. So that would kind of be like PR, things like that. And approving a construction project would be correct.
Okay.
So let's move on to chapter 2.
All right.
This chapter is a little bit longer. So we'll briefly go over the sections and then do the apply your knowledge and the study questions in the back.
Mhm.
So the study questions for forms of contamination are: what are biological, chemical, and physical contaminants, and how can you prevent food from being contaminated by them? How can the deliberate contamination of food be prevented? What is the correct response to a foodborne illness outbreak? And what are the most common food allergens, and how can you prevent exposure to food allergens?
Mhm. The first word here, how do you pronounce that? Shigella, outbreak,
Oh, Shigella.
Shigella outbreak.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's one of the pathogens that we're going to go over in this chapter.
Mhm.
So there are 3 different types of contaminants. So biological, chemical, and physical contaminants. So they can come from anywhere. A lot of the times they'll come from people. So we talked about personal hygiene, the last one, not sneezing, coughing, anything like that over the food. That could cause, that could be a way of contaminating the food. Foods can also be contaminated from the animal that it comes from. So I know, we know about salmonella, right? So that's a different way of a contaminant being in the food. So that's why we make sure we cook foods at the proper temperature to kill the pathogens and make sure there are no contaminants. Another way is a fecal oral route of contamination. So that's how there are E. coli outbreaks and hepatitis A outbreaks. So that is fecal matter getting on the food and people eating it. And that's one of the ways that pathogens get in the food and make people sick. So the symptoms of foodborne illness are diarrhea, vomiting, fever, nausea, abdominal cramps, and jaundice. So if you're not aware, that's a yellowing of the skin and eyes. That's also shown in the book. These are the things that you want to watch out for. If there to see if there has been a contaminant in the food, and there's a foodborne illness or an outbreak of a pathogen making people sick. So bacteria that cause foodborne illness have some basic characteristics. So location, it's found everywhere, and a lot of them do cause illnesses. Detection, so they can't be seen, smelled, or tasted. So we just have to make sure that we're taking the proper steps to make sure that it can't grow. Growth, bacteria need 6 conditions to grow. And then we'll go over those conditions. And the acronym is FAT-TOM. So if you can remember that, it's kind of funny, it's catchy. And then prevention. The most important way to prevent bacteria from causing foodborne illness is to control time and temperature. So we talked about that a lot in the past chapter, and keeping the food safe. So the FAT-TOM is the conditions for bacteria to grow. So food. Most bacteria need nutrients. So TCS food supports the growth of bacteria better than other types of food. So that's including the chart that we saw in the last chapter. Acidity. So bacteria grow best in food that contains little to no acid. So the pH is around 4 to 7, where the bacteria can grow the fastest. So this is the most unsafe for the food, the most unsafe pH for the food to be at. Temperature. So if this food is not cooked or stored at the appropriate temperature, that will allow the bacteria to grow rapidly as well. So that'll be between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's called the temperature danger zone. So the food should be stored under 41 degrees and over 135 degrees to stay safe in that safe zone. Time. So bacteria need time to grow. The more time bacteria spends in the temperature danger zone, the more opportunity it has to grow to unsafe levels. So it's very important. Like in the last case study, we talked about how he had left the burgers out on the counter at a room temperature. That's going to allow that bacteria to grow over time. So we want to make sure that it's in a temperature controlled zone. Oxygen. Some bacteria need oxygen to grow. Others grow when oxygen is not there. So it also includes like wrapping food up, like in a container or in plastic, something like that. And then moisture. Bacteria grow well in food with high levels of moisture. So this is called water activity. And the higher the value of moisture, the more the bacteria is going to grow. So you'll see in wet foods, like meat is a perfect example. It's a TCS food. It does have a high level of moisture, and that's going to allow the bacteria to grow much quicker. So then we can go to major bacteria that cause foodborne illness. So the 4 particular ones are Salmonella typhi, non-typhoidal Salmonella, Shigella, and Shiga toxin producing. So this is also known as E. coli. So Salmonella typhi is in humans only. So this is going to be this is found in people with typhoid fever. That's what this causes. So this can be in ready-to-eat food and beverages.
Okay, I lost you in the humans only. Which one and where?
Salmonella typhi
Okay,
is going to be on page 2.6 in the next chart.
right, okay.
Okay. And
And that-
prevention measures are excluded from the operation of food handlers who have been diagnosed with an illness caused by that. Washing hands and cooking food to minimum internal temperatures. So I know we just talked about that with the last chart, making sure that the temperature is controlled for your food. So not non-typhoidal salmonella. So this is what I was talking about when the animals carry a certain type of bacteria. So that would be one of these. So this is in poultry and eggs, meat, milk and dairy products, and produce like tomatoes, peppers, and cantaloupes. So cooking poultry and eggs to a minimum internal temperatures, preventing cross-contamination between poultry and ready-to-eat foods, and excluding food handlers who are vomiting, have diarrhea, or have been diagnosed with an illness caused by the non-typhoidal salmonella.
Mhm.
So Shigella is next. This is found within the feces of humans with the illness.
Mm.
So then flies can also transfer this bacteria from feces to food. Some foods that are easily contaminated are salads containing TCS food like potatoes, tuna, shrimp, macaroni, and chicken. And then food that has been in contact with contaminated water, such as produce. So exclude some prevention measures are excluding those that have diarrhea or have been diagnosed with an illness caused by Shigella. Washing hands and controlling flies inside and outside of the operation. It's easier to control the flies inside. So we would just want to make sure we focus on that. And then Shiga toxin producing Escherichia. So this is called E. coli. And this can be found in the intestines of cattle. And it's also found in infected people that contract E. coli. So this will be found in ground beef, so raw and undercooked beef, and contaminated produce. So prevention measures are excluding those who have been diagnosed with a disease from the bacteria, cooking food to minimum internal temperatures, purchasing produce from approved reliable suppliers, and preventing cross-contamination between raw meat and ready-to-eat foods.
Whoa, this is deep.
It is pretty deep. So it's a lot of things to learn.
Scary.
So to move forward, another pathogen is viruses. So the two major viruses that cause foodborne illness are hepatitis A and norovirus. So hepatitis A, like I mentioned before, is commonly found in feces of people. It can contaminate water and different types of food and is linked mostly with ready-to-eat foods, but can be linked with shellfish and other things that have been in contaminated water. So the foods are ready to eat and shellfish, and then exclude from the operation food handlers who have been diagnosed with hepatitis A and who have jaundice, washing hands, avoiding bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food, and purchasing shellfish from approved reputable supplier.
So
And then norovirus.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go
When
ahead.
it says to exclude the operation of food handlers who have had jaundice within 7 days, I mean, when you're hiring people, do you ask those questions? Like, have you
So
had
people who have jaundice, you can typically tell
by
they look sick, they have a yellowing to their eyes or skin. So that's a way that you could tell if they have jaundice.
okay, all right,
Mhm.
but not like over time before, but within a certain time.
within a certain amount of time.
Okay, or if they're employed and they come to work looking that way, you want.
Right, you can, visibly tell that they are sick.
Make me want to stay in my kitchen by myself, no one else. Man, I'm
Right.
telling you, because I have a problem when somebody just, yes.
So the next virus is going to be norovirus. So this is also linked with ready-to-eat food and has been linked with contaminated water. So this is another one that is feces to oral contamination. So it's typically when infected food handlers touch food or equipment with fingers that are contaminated by feces. So this is commonly found in ready-to-eat foods and shellfish from contaminated water. So the prevention measures are exclude from the operation food handlers who are vomiting or have diarrhea and have been diagnosed with norovirus. Washing hands, avoiding bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food, and purchasing shellfish from approved and reputable suppliers.
Mhm.
So some other ones that you want to look out for are parasites, fungi. So this includes yeast, molds, and mushrooms. Some mushrooms produce toxins that can make people sick. So if it's not a natural part of the food, you want to make sure you throw it out. Biological toxins. So this will be some that are naturally associated with plants, mushrooms, seafood. So you want to make sure you're aware of that if you're preparing that. Then some that are not natural are histamine. So that can be made by fish when it's high temperature abused. In tuna, bonito, mackerel, and mahi-mahi. And then some fish can become contaminated when they consume smaller fish that have already been contaminated with a toxin. And then some chemical contaminants. So this is the second. There's biological, chemical, and a physical contaminant. So the chemical contaminants would include the cleaning chemicals that you would use. So cleaners, sanitizers, polishes, machine lubricants, and pesticides. Also deodorizers, first aid products, and health and beauty products like lotion, hairspray, things like that, perfumes. That is also considered a chemical contaminant. So it would also include kitchenware and equipment like items made from pewter, copper, zinc, and some types of paint and pottery. So it's not always safe for food. So you want to make sure if you're using those things, most of the time it'll say on there that it is safe to use for food. Other than that, it's just going to be a decoration. So some symptoms of chemical contaminants might vary. So vomiting and diarrhea are typical. You want to make sure you call the poison control center if someone is having these symptoms, so you can identify what made them sick and not use that item any longer. So the chemicals you use for prevention must be approved to use in a food service operation and be necessary for the maintenance of the facility. So you want to purchase your chemicals from approved reputable suppliers. Store chemicals away from preparation areas. So you don't want to store chemicals anywhere near where you're storing food at. They should have separate sections for them to be stored in. And they can't be stored above food or at food contact surfaces, just in case there is a spill from above. It might splash on something, or something might get knocked over on a counter and it might overflow into a food area. So you want to avoid that. And then using chemicals for their intended use and following the manufacturer's directions. So that's something that we talked about earlier, like using bleach and Clorox to sanitize. That might not be what that product is intended for. So you want to make sure you're getting the correct chemical exactly to make sure you can sanitize your products and make sure no one gets sick.
Right, okay.
Only handle food with equipment and utensils approved for food service use. Make sure manufacturer's labels on original chemical containers are readable. Sometimes over time, water or excessive use of a product can wear away that label. So you want to make sure if someone new is coming in to your operation, they might not know how to use it, or they might not be able to read that can. So you want to make sure it's readable. If not, you might want to replace it, just so there aren't any accidents or anything like that happens. So the last one is following the manufacturer's directions and local regulatory requirements when throwing out chemicals. So typically they tell you not to pour chemicals down the drain or in the toilet because it'll pollute the water supply. So you want to make sure that you're disposing of the chemicals in a safe way. And then there are physical contaminants. So food can become contaminated when objects get into it, or when natural objects are left in food, like bones, or something like that. So this can be metal shavings from cans, wood, fingernails, staples, bandages, glass, jewelry, and dirt. And then fruit pits, bones, things like that can also be left in the food to make it unsafe. And then some symptoms would include cuts, dental damage, or choking. If the item is ingested, it can include bleeding or pain from them swallowing it and it going through the digestive tract. So prevention: purchase food from approved, reputable suppliers to prevent this contamination, and closely inspecting the food that you receive before putting it out, just to make sure that there's nothing in there. So the apply your knowledge section. So which ones are contaminants? Write an X next to each item that can be a physical contaminant.
I'm not sure.
So the first picture is them pulling a bone out of some salmon.
Is that what he's doing? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes, that is.
So yes, that would be one. The second picture is them removing a cherry pit from a can of cherries.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. And then the third one is some staples on a Chinese takeout box.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Those can all
do that back in the day. That's how they used to do it when we were younger. And then they had that big old thing that will hold it. You could hold it from the wire.
Oh, like the metal wire.
Yeah, they stopped that in most of the places I've been ordering lately.
Yeah, now they have it inserts and closes.
Oh yeah, this is different. So a couple of things changed over the years as I guess we grow with knowledge after killing some people. No, just
right. So the second apply your knowledge is what's wrong with this picture. Write an X next to each picture that shows an unsafe practice when handling chemicals. So the first picture is going to be the chemicals stored on the same shelf as food.
Correct.
Right. So you don't want it on the same level or above food, and you don't want to store it with food at all. The second picture is spraying gloss on a fryer and shining the outside of the fryer.
I don't know, because
so that one would be unsafe because they're spraying the gloss close to the frying oil. So that gloss could be a chemical contaminant that gets in the frying oil and could potentially make people sick.
Okay.
And then 3 is spraying a sanitizing bottle on a counter.
It says sanitizer and they spraying it on there. That's not a chemical problem. It's a
So that one would be a safe practice since they're cleaning it and there's no food near the area that they're cleaning. So what does it stand for? Each letter below stands for a condition that supports the growth of bacteria. Complete the word for each letter in the space provided. So this is the FATTOM acronym we went over earlier. So F.
I have no idea. I have to look.
I can just go over these really quickly because it
Yeah,
was a little bit
please.
much to remember. So F stands for food.
Yeah.
Um, A is acidity.
Acidity.
T is temperature.
Temp. Okay.
The other T is time.
Time.
O is oxygen.
Okay.
And M is moisture.
And moisture. I only got the A. And I think I would have got time or temperature, but not both. And then M was moisture.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
And then apply your knowledge. Identify the pathogen from the description given and write its name in the space provided. So the first description of the pathogen is I am commonly linked with ready-to-eat food. I am found in the feces of infected people. Excluding staff with jaundice can stop me, and hand washing can prevent me.
So we need to write what the pathogen is?
What the pathogen is.
I have no idea. It's a lot of stuff.
So this one is going to be hepatitis A. This one's memorable. This one's memorable because people will experience jaundice when they contract this disease. So that's how you can tell that this is hepatitis A.
Okay. I guess
So
I
the
didn't
second pathogen, I'm
what
sorry.
they're asking us for, the answer, like what was we looking for? Okay, I'm listening. But where did we go over hepatitis A as
So
far as
that was in the
2.8?
major viruses that cause foodborne illness.
Okay.
2.3 and then 2.2 is the other one, is the other chart.
Okay. All right.
So the second pathogen description is I am carried in the bloodstream and intestinal tract of humans. I am commonly linked with beverages and ready-to-eat food. Cooking food correctly can prevent me, and washing hands can stop me.
I think it is it the norovirus here? It
So
says,
this one's going to be Salmonella typhi. So
I have to go over this one.
you can tell this one is carried in the bloodstream and intestinal tract of humans. So this is one of those ones that you want to make sure you exclude people who are sick or diarrhea or vomiting from your food operations. And you can just remember this one only lives in humans.
Living humans in the bloodstream.
Yes.
Okay, I underline bloodstream and I underline humans. Okay, and then for hepatitis A, I underlined the jaundice.
Jaundice, right.
Okay.
So the next pathogen description is many farm animals carry me naturally. I've been found in milk and dairy products, produce, and poultry. Cooking eggs to minimum internal temperatures can prevent me, and preventing cross-contamination between poultry and ready-to-eat food can stop me.
It's I don't know how SHIGA.
So this one's going to be non-typhoidal salmonella. So you can remember this one by being in farm animals. Farm animals carry this one, as well as being in eggs. You typically hear of getting salmonella if you eat like cake batter or cookie batter that hasn't been cooked yet, because it's found typically in eggs. And then also in milk and dairy products, poultry, produce, and poultry.
So it's called
non-typhoidal salmonella.
So it's salmonella, but it's non-typhoidal. It's not.
Yes.
Okay. This will be a new. Have to go over this one again for sure. All right.
Okay. So the next apply your knowledge section is what is the best way to control them? Write the letter of the most important prevention measure for each pathogen in the space provided. Some letters may be used more than once. So the 3 ways to control them are control time and temperature, practicing correct personal hygiene, and purchasing from approved reputable suppliers.
Okay.
So
So bacteria
bacteria,
would be A.
yes. Viruses,
Virus is correct. Hygiene.
yes, that's B.
B.
C is parasites.
Parasites would be A.
So parasites is going to be C, purchasing from approved reputable suppliers.
Hmm.
So making sure the produce that they have or the animals that they have are healthy
Okay.
and don't have any parasites. Fungi,
Fungi. A.
that's going to be C. So the fungi they're talking about is more so mold. So making sure that anything you're getting isn't moldy. Yeah.
The purchasing. Okay.
So C, or sorry, I just gave you the answer. 5 is C, plant toxins. Making sure that you're getting the correct part of the plant every time from that reputable supplier. 6,
I would say C.
C is correct. And then 7, seafood toxins.
Yeah. I mean, seafood toxins from C.
Yes, that's correct. So the next section is deliberate contamination of food. So there are some ways that you can stop the contamination of your food happening deliberately. So the following groups can contaminate your food: terrorists or activists, disgruntled current or former staff, vendors, and competitors.
Wow.
So this can happen by using biological, chemical, or physical contaminants, or even radioactive materials. So there's different ways to prevent this from happening. So you want to use the ALERT acronym to try to prevent this. So assure, make sure that your products you receive are from a safe source. So supervised product deliveries, using approved suppliers who practice food defense, and requesting that delivery vehicles are locked or sealed so no one can tamper with the products. Look, monitor the security of products in the facility. So limit access to prep and storage areas. Locking storage areas is one way to do this, shown the photo at the left of him locking the door. Creating a system for handling damaged products, storing chemicals in a secure location, and then training staff to spot food defense threats.
Oh, wow. I did not think of security for the food. Oh my God.
Yes. So employees, knowing who is in your facility, limiting access to prep and storage areas, identifying all visitors and verifying credentials, and conducting background checks on staff. Those are all 3, I would say, really important things to make sure you know who's around the food that you're going to be serving to people. Reports, keep information related to food defense accessible. So receiving logs, office files and documents, staff files, and random food defense inspections. And threats, identify what you will do and who you will contact if there is suspicious activity or threat at your operation. Hold any product you suspect to be contaminated. Contact your regulatory authority immediately and maintain an emergency contact list. So apply your knowledge. The best defense, write an X next to the practices that may be a risk to food defense. So 1, limiting access to prep areas.
It may be a risk. Limiting the access to, yes, the best defense is to.
So that one's going to be no. We're looking at what is a risk. So that would be the right step. So number 2, giving staff access to all storage areas.
That is not giving staff access to all storage areas.
Yes, so that is a risk.
Okay, so put an X. I think I was thinking the opposite.
Yeah, right. So number 3, storing chemicals in a locked storage area.
That's a good practice.
Right, so we're not going to mark that one. Buying produce from local farmers market.
I don't know about that.
So that one is going to be a risk. We love to support local businesses and small farms. However, sometimes they can be non-reputable. So if you're, purchasing a large amount of produce for your business, that might be, a risk because you can make a lot of people sick by doing that if there is a contaminant in that food that you're buying.
Right. Okay. Giving tours.
So giving tours of the kitchen to the general public.
That's a risk.
Right. 6, holding products that you suspect are contaminated.
That's a risk. Holding products that you suspect. If you suspect it, that's a risk.
So that's not going to be considered a risk because if the product is contaminated, you want to hold it instead of throw it away so you can notify the authorities of what was contaminated, if it made someone sick, or if you noticed that it had like physical contaminants in it. So you do want to hold it instead of throwing it away. Allowing delivery drivers to store products in coolers.
That's not a risk.
So that one is going to be a risk. If a delivery driver is bringing cold food, you want it to be in a refrigerated unit instead of a small personal cooler.
Okay.
And then accepting food deliveries from trucks that have not been kept locked.
Oh, that's a risk.
That's definitely a risk.
Okay.
So responding to a foodborne illness outbreak. So there's 7 steps to this. So that's gathering information. You want to ask the person making the complaint, their symptoms and identifying the food that they ate that made them sick. Notifying authorities. So you want to contact your local regulatory authority if there is an outbreak. You want to segregate the product. So that was one of the things I just said. Instead of throwing the product away, you want to remove the product and keep it and mark it as do not use and do not throw away. So the authorities have the product that made people sick so they can test it. Documenting information. So logging information about the product. So the description, the date, lot number, so where it came from, what date came, so they can trace it back to the producer. Identifying staff, maintaining a list of the staff that was on the premises at the time of the contamination, so they can get interviewed about their health status. Like in the previous chapters, we don't want anyone in the operation if they're sick. Cooperating with authorities, so cooperating with regulatory authorities in the investigation and being able to provide the appropriate documentation. And then reviewing procedures. So review food handling procedures to identify if standards are not being met or procedures are not working. Like we reviewed previously, a lot of the foodborne illness outbreaks are going to come from people not following the proper procedures. So just making sure that you update your staff on those procedures that you have within your operation. So apply your knowledge. Handling a foodborne illness outbreak. Read the story below and determine whether the situation was handled incorrectly. Then identify what Emma did right and what she did wrong. So Emma, the manager of Tiny's sandwich shop, took a phone call from a customer who complained of diarrhea and vomiting after eating a tuna salad sandwich the day before. Emma was not worried about the complaint, but she interviewed the customer for details anyway. After several more calls like that one, she knew there was a problem. Emma threw away all of the tuna salads so no one else would get sick. Then she called her local regulatory authority for guidance. While she was waiting for the authority to arrive, she made a list of the staff who were working the day before. What did Emma do right?
Well, she called the authorities and she took the complaint. She took the complaint by listening, and then she wound up calling the authority and she threw away the food. No, that wasn't right. She probably shouldn't have threw it away. She should have kept it for review. But what she did right was did the interview.
Right. So she gathered the information.
And the,
She notified the authorities, and then she identified the staff that were present at the time of the outbreak.
right,
So
okay.
what did she do wrong?
She threw away the food.
Right.
Yeah, she threw away the
And then
food.
she also didn't document information about the product. So where it came from, the date on the product, anything like that.
She did not document the food sources. Okay.
So next we're going to move on to food allergens. So food allergies are caused by a protein in a food or ingredient that some people are sensitive to. And if they eat too much of that protein, it'll make them have a reaction to the food, which is an allergen. So allergies can happen when they eat the food or several hours later. And the most common symptoms are nausea, wheezing or shortness of breath, hives or itchy rashes, swelling of various parts of the body like the face, eyes, hands, and feet, vomiting or diarrhea, abdominal pain, and itchy throat. So they can start out mild but become serious quickly. A lot of people need EpiPens for their allergies or to go to the hospital. So there are a lot of preventative measures to make sure people don't have allergic reactions when consuming foods. So out of 160 food items, these big eight, they call it, food items account for 90% of all allergic reactions and outbreaks. So the big eight are milk, soy, eggs, wheat, fish such as bass, flounder, and cod, crustacean shellfish such as crab, lobster, and shrimp, peanuts and tree nuts such as walnuts and pecans. So ways to prevent allergic reactions are food labels, making sure the food is labeled correctly and has all ingredients listed on the label, and training your service staff. So this is a really big part when it comes to having a restaurant. So the staff knows all the ingredients. So describing dishes, telling customers how the item is prepared, if they do indicate that they have an allergen. Identifying ingredients. So being able to tell customers if the food they are allergic to is in a menu item. So any secret ingredients you may have, your staff may need to know those ingredients as well, so they can properly identify that ingredient if someone is allergic to the ingredient and request that item. Identify the allergen special order. So when there's an order, say you take someone's order and they say, I'm allergic to peanuts. You want to specifically mark peanut allergy on their ticket when taking their order. And then delivering food. So when delivering food to a customer, you want to confirm that the allergen special order with the kitchen staff who's picking up the food. So you would say, oh, is this the peanut allergy? This is the plate with the peanut allergy. They would say yes. And then you would then take it to the customer separate from the other food, just to not get confused. So another way to prevent cross-contamination and an allergic reaction is to prevent cross contact. So you want to make sure you're cooking foods that are allergens in different, say, oils, for example, or on different surfaces. So if someone has a peanut allergy and you're preparing peanuts on a surface, you want to prepare their food on a different surface than that one. Or, you know, like for an example is the picture on the right. So frying chicken with shrimp, that's cross contact because shrimp is a high allergen and chicken is not. So someone that's not suspecting to have an allergen to the chicken might, because shrimp was fried with that chicken as well. So you want to try to avoid that. Washing, rinsing, and sanitizing cookware, utensils, and equipment before preparing the food. Making sure the allergen doesn't touch anything for customers with food allergies, including food, beverages, utensils, equipment, and gloves. washing hands and changing gloves before preparing the food, using separate fryers and cooking oils, and labeling food packaged on site for retail sale. So the next section is apply your knowledge, identify the symptoms. Write an X next to the symptoms that could indicate a customer is having an allergic reaction. So number 1 is fever.
Yes.
So that one's going to be no.
No.
So we typically don't see them
A fever.
with a fever.
Okay. The highs is a yes.
So hives is a yes. Number 3, nausea.
Yes.
Yes. Number 4, bruising.
No.
No. Number 5, sneezing.
Possible. I think so.
So sneezing is not one of them. Coughing.
No.
No. 7 is diarrhea.
Yes.
Yes. Itchy rash.
Yes.
Swollen face.
Yes.
Yes. Abdominal pain.
No.
And then abdominal pain is actually one of them.
It is.
Yes.
Mm.
Shortness of breath.
Yes.
And then tightening the chest.
I don't think so.
No. So apply your knowledge. The most common food allergens. Write an X next to a food if it is or contains one of the 8 most common food allergens. So green beans dressed with olive oil and garlic.
No.
No. Smoked salmon wrapped in a lettuce leaf.
Yes.
Yes. Multigrain bread made with wheat.
Wheat. Yes.
Yes. Melon slices wrapped with prosciutto, which is ham.
Prosciutto is ham. No.
Right. Chocolate candy filled with peanut butter cream.
Yes. Peanut butter.
Yes. Raw oysters on the half shell.
Yes.
Yes. Potatoes sauteed in duck fat.
Duck fat. I don't think so.
No, that's not one. Mushroom seasoned with soy sauce and brown sugar.
Mushrooms. Yes.
So that one's going to be yes because of the soy sauce. Soy is one of those
Mushroom.
common allergens. So we want to,
but not because of the mushrooms.
not
either?
because of mushrooms.
Oh, all right.
So squash sauteed in corn oil.
No.
No. Mixed grain salad topped with walnut pieces.
Yes. The walnut.
Yes. Banana shake made with vanilla ice cream.
No. I want to
That
make
one's going to be yes.
It is.
Yes. So that one contains milk.
Oh, the milk in the
Right. And then vegetable omelet topped with tomato sauce.
They got me on that one. Tomato sauce. No.
So that one's going to be yes because of the vegetable omelet. The omelet contains eggs, and that's one of the allergens. The most common allergens.
The eggs. Okay, they got me on that one too.
So there's another apply your knowledge section. Keeping customers with allergies safe. Read each situation and determine whether an employee did the right thing to help prevent an allergic reaction. So a customer told Daniel, the server, that he had a dairy allergy. The customer wanted to know if the chicken salad had any dairy in it. Daniel was honest and told him that he was not totally sure, but it was probably fine. Did Daniel do the right thing to keep the customer safe? Why or why not?
No, he should check with the manager, the kitchen manager, to find out what was in there. Go back to the customer and let them know, make them have a decision. But no, he did not.
Right.
As he said, honestly, he don't know, but he think, no, those are not good words.
Right. So he should be able to describe how the dish is prepared and be able to suggest alternatives. Number 2, the customer with the dairy allergy then asked about the chicken sandwich. Now Daniel was positive that there was no dairy in that one, so he let him know. The customer ordered the chicken sandwich and fries, and Daniel made sure to note the allergy on the order. The customer's friend ordered a cheeseburger. Did Daniel do the right thing to keep the customer safe? Why or why not?
I think he kept them safe this time, and he also put it on the ticket that he had the allergy regarding.
Right, that's correct. So number 3, in the kitchen, Laura the cook noted the allergen special order. She could not remember if the breaded chicken used in the sandwich was dairy-free, so she double-checked the label. Fortunately, it did not have any dairy.
She did right. She double checked the label for the dairy-free sandwich or the bread. I think it was, yeah.
Correct. Number 4, before starting the order, Laura washed, rinsed, and sanitized the prep station and got out clean utensils. Then she washed her hands and put on new gloves. She used the fryer that is only used for allergen special orders to cook the chicken and fries. As she finished assembling the sandwich and plating the order, she was careful to use a clean prep station and keep the special orders separated from the other orders. Did Laura do the right thing to keep the customer safe while or not?
Yes, she did. She kept everything separate, and that was a really good thing. And she did the sanitizing between.
Right. And she also used the allergen fryer
Yeah.
for the different orders. So number 5, when the order was ready, Daniel confirmed with the kitchen that it was the allergen special order. He also checked the plate to make sure that there was not anything with any dairy on it. Then he hand delivered the chicken sandwich order to the customer with the dairy allergy. Another server brought out the cheeseburger from the customer's friend. Did Daniel do the right thing to keep the customer safe while or not?
I believe so, by doing it separately, handling it.
Yes. And then he also checked that he was getting the allergen friendly order with the kitchen before he took it.
Mhm. That's good. Wow.
Okay, so let's do the chapter review case study and wrap up chapter 2.
Mhm.
So Sean, the chef at Sunnyside Cafe, decided to prepare his famous potato salad. After cooking the potatoes, he started to gather all the ingredients to make the potato salad. However, he stopped to run to the restroom as his stomach was upset. He came back to the kitchen and started prepping the potato salad as the lunch rush would begin soon. The next day, Sunnyside Cafe received several complaints of customers with vomiting and diarrhea. Sean took the caller's information and offered to send them each a coupon for 2 free meals. Sean suspected the potato salad was a problem, but all of it had been used the previous day. Sean immediately closed the cafe and threw away any food that had been open. He also had staff clean and sanitize the prep areas. Then he called an emergency crew meeting to review standards and procedures. Satisfied that he had addressed any problem, he reopened the next day. What did Sean do right?
Well, I think he did a lot of things right as far as closing, number one, and going over with the staff again on what was happening in the calls that came through. He did that right. I don't
That's
know.
correct. And he also reviewed the standards and procedures with his staff. That was one of the important things that he did as well.
Yeah.
So what did Sean do wrong?
Well, I believe he himself was the culprit. He was sick. He was the one vomiting, and he went in. So he went in and made the potato salad after he was sick. That's what I think he did wrong. He went to the restroom because his stomach was upset.
Right. So he didn't wash his hands after using the restroom, and then he didn't document the information about the suspected product. And then he also didn't notify the local authorities about the outbreak. And then he also didn't identify the staff members who were in contact with the product.
Oh, okay. He did not document. All right. Yeah, he did do a lot of stuff. He tried to pacify with free meals.
Right.
No. Okay, he didn't.
So study questions. So circle the best answers to each question. What are the most common symptoms of a foodborne illness?
Foodborne illness would be the C, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, nausea, abdominal pain, and jaundice.
So that is correct. I don't know why on the other part it said that fever was not
correct, but it's listed.
But that is the correct answer. That's the correct answer. It's C. Yeah, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, nausea, abdominal cramps, and
I noticed that first, as you go down through all the multiple choices, they have fever listed in each one of the categories.
Everyone, yeah.
But they said we weren't.
I have to double check that. Maybe it was just me.
What number was that? That was over on page 2.24 when it says But it was for allergy,
Oh, okay. Okay.
not for food, borne illnesses.
Okay. That's where I was confused. Yeah,
That's
you're right.
different. Okay. All right. How does, we're number 2, excuse me.
We're
and
on
thank-
number 2. So how does most contamination of food happen?
It happens when people cause the contamination.
Yes. So C is correct.
Uh-huh.
So the contamination typically is caused by cross-contamination or personal hygiene standards. People not washing their hands, touching their hair, face, mouth, nose, things like that. What is the most important way to prevent a foodborne illness from bacteria?
D.
So it'd
No.
be A, controlling the time and temperature. So
Oh,
remembering the time and temperature, that's how bacteria grows the quickest, being at an unsafe temperature for long periods of time.
okay.
4, what is the most important way to prevent a foodborne illness from viruses?
Viruses. From viruses will be B. Prevent cross-contamination? No. It
So
would be C.
it's
Practice.
gonna be C.
Yeah.
So humans typically carry the viruses, and the viruses are spread through not having good personal hygiene.
Okay.
5, parasites are commonly linked with what type of food?
Parasites, C.
Yes, seafood.
Mhm.
6, a guest had a reversal of hot and cold sensations after eating seafood. What most likely caused the illness?
Hot and cold sensations would cause the seafood. C. Biological.
Yes, it's going to be biological toxins.
Uh-huh. Okay, hot and cold sensations, eating seafood, biological. All right.
So 7, a prep cook stores a bottle of sanitizer on a shelf above a prep table. To prevent chemical contamination, what should be done differently?
To prevent contamination, what should be done differently to prevent? Sanitize the bottle away from the prep, the bottle on the floor, the bottle, I'm not sure.
So it's going to be A, storing the sanitizer bottle away from the prep area. So we want to make sure that chemicals are stored away from food.
Okay. I know, but I have to read it again to go over the multiple choices is what it was that didn't work.
Right, yeah. So
Okay.
to prevent the deliberate contamination of food, a manager should know who's in the facility, monitor the security of products, keep information related to food security on file, and know blank.
D.
Yes. So whom to contact about suspicious activity.
Mm-hmm.
9, what should food handlers do to prevent food allergens from being transferred to food?
Store the food at a 41 Fahrenheit or lower. Handlers prevent allergens from being transferred to food. Label the chemical in containers. Food. B.
So it's going to be A, use clean and sanitized utensils when prepping the order. So
I
this is allergens. So we want to make sure that the utensils aren't going to be used with anything that is considered one of those big 8 allergens on someone's food that is allergic to that. So that would be A. B, that would be preventing bacteria. C would be preventing bacteria as well. And then D would be preventing a chemical contaminant.
Okay. So I think I got one. Okay. And then
10, what steps should be taken if a manager suspects a foodborne illness outbreak?
set aside suspected product and label it for do not use or do not discard.
Yes. So they're going to do that so they can make sure the authorities can test those products for any contaminants, and they can see where the product came from.
Wow, we did good for 2 chapters because I didn't think we were gonna get through 2 chapters in 1 hour. But thanks for taking the time. So yeah, when will be the next time? We next Monday or Wednesday?
So it'll be next Monday, yes.
Monday.
And then we're going to go over chapter 3, 4, and 5. These ones are a little bit shorter. So I think 2 of these chapters is equal to chapter 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
So
that's what we'll go over next week. If you want to read ahead,
I will.
that might be helpful.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I will.